Here we come. Premed Office Hours, episode 203, with the fabulous Reverend Dr. James Scott Wright, former director of admissions at UT Southwestern, retired executive director at TMDSAS.
Hello. How's it going, everybody?
It's going.
Great to be here. Happy day, happy week, happy month. All the good things.
All that good stuff.
Yeah.
Yes. For those who don't know, I am Dr. Ryan Gray, former somebody, I don't know, creator of the Premed Years podcast, host of that. Lots of podcasts, the MCAT podcast, the old Premeds podcast, Ask Dr. Gray, Premed Q&A. We got it. If you have questions, I've written some books, all that good stuff. Co-founder or founder at Medical School HQ and Mapped. Go check out all the fun stuff that we do. But today is our day to help you, to work with you, kind of one to many here as we go through this process to answer your pre-med questions. So if you are joining us on YouTube, you can ask your questions there, premed.tv. We have a early question here from our friend Nintendo Man. In short, which is why I said short, I find myself in back-to-back bad situations interfering with my academics and application this cycle. I still want to apply, but in September, any advice when it comes to late apps? Reverend Dr. James Scott Wright. I once heard a professor, I believe it was at the NIH, professor say, a late application is your first failed medical school test.
Wow.
What do you think of that?
Well, I would say, Nintendo Man, that you're really not telling us much in terms of what these back-to-back bad situations are that are interfering. And so, I'm left to know, what does that mean? It says with my academics. So does that mean there's failures involved or bad grades, or what's going on that's interrupting things? And so it's really difficult to know how those things beyond just the late application might impact the cycle. So I would say a late application, and it also frankly depends on if you're applying MD and or DO. I think sometimes a late application is not as impactful for DO schools as it might be for MD schools. So all that having been said, my feeling is that always the only guarantee involved in the process is if you don't apply, you're not going to get in. And so, I would say if you're willing to take the chance and potentially waste your money, then, go for it. All I can say is no. So, you could always, apply again next cycle. There's no foundational or fundamental disadvantage for being a reapplicant. So, I don't see a problem in going forward, as long as you sort of do it with your eyes wide open and knowing kind of what that means.
Yeah. Ultimately, what I say at the end of the day, it's time and money. If you want to submit your application, go for it. But it is later, and your risks are higher. But students get in applying in September every year. Why not you? So it is a risk, a calculated risk. Do what you need to do. Hopefully life calms down. And that's the problem with life is it never calms down, and you just got to work your way through it.
You got to move your way through it. Yeah.
Yes. John asks a question. For one of my school's secondaries, they ask how a challenging experience has affected your personal growth. Would being called a racial slur by a patient be appropriate, or is that too far? A challenging experience affected your personal growth. So, Scott, I often will say, and I think you have a similar potential outlook here. I'm just looking at my wall. My my wall fell down. It's okay.
Oops.
I'll fix it after.
Hopefully it
It's like
wasn't a brick wall.
no, it's like a styrofoam plug for like a crawl space, and it like blew out.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry, got distracted there. I'm like, what's that big hole in the wall? I'm like, oh yeah. Anyway, we often will talk about when talking about challenges or failures to stay away from academic stuff. And then I typically add in stay away from clinical experiences, because just to me, it's very cliche. Students are always trying to force in clinical anecdotes.
Right.
But this is potentially a little bit different. It is a patient, but the experience may be a little bit more unique. What do you think here?
Yeah, I mean, oh, where'd I go? Here we go.
Oh, it's me. I just want to
Oh,
show
there I
me.
am. Wow. I was like, whoa. So, John, honestly, I think that this sounds like a horrible situation for you. A definitely challenging experience. I don't think, your comment is that too far? And no, I don't think it's too far. I mean, I think it sounds like a very difficult situation, potentially one that could occur again. We like to think that that wouldn't occur, but when you think about people that are, patients, patients usually, typically come for health care when they are compromised, either physically, emotionally, mentally, or all of the above. And so, I hate to tell you this, but it might happen again at some point in the future. And so being able to deal with that and being able to have a way where you are able to sort of get past it and grow from it without compromising your integrity in terms of the process with the patient. So I don't think it's too far. I don't think, I think it would be appropriate. But that's really up to you. It would be very vulnerable of you and authentic of you to include that in a secondary, and I think it potentially could be a real effective way of communicating how you deal with challenges.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Go for it. Yeah, and I would just say, right, the prompt, John, as you at least have put it here, is how has it affected your personal growth? Don't force in the clinical aspect of it or
Right.
being a
Right.
physician and all of that stuff.
Right.
That's where I just want you to be careful, or at least I
Mhm.
recommend.
Yep.
All right. Monica, I submitted 6 LORs from Interfolio to AMCAS already, which are completed, but now finally do have a great DO letter after something something. 6 is max. I tried to delete one so I can add a DO LOR, but not sure how. Yeah, if you're in Interfolio or you're in AMCAS, you're just going to have to reach out to them. I don't know the technical aspects of that. So ask AMCAS. And it's AACOMAS, not ACC. Sid asks a question. In general, is it better to apply with low clinical? I have 300 hours all over the last 6 months. I don't know who defines that as low. Or take an extra gap year to get more experience. Is there increased scrutiny of taking an extra gap year? Scott, let me tell you about a session that I was just in. I went to the National Association of Advisors of the Health Professions this past week in Cincinnati. And there was a session that was put on by an assistant director of admissions at a medical school and a pre-health advisor at a medical school. And they shared lots of similar students. The students were applying to this person's medical school. And so they could kind of speak to both sides of the application, the advisor helping the student, but also the director of admissions or assistant director of admissions in this case. seeing those applications. And I think they gave 3 case studies. All 3 of those students got in on their second or third application cycle. And it was very frustrating for me to sit in that session, because the only thing that they really talked about was, oh, during this extra year, they got more of everything. They got more clinical experience and more research and a higher MCAT score. And to the advisors in the room, and maybe this was the goal, right? To the advisors in the room, to me, it just focused on numbers. To be a better applicant, you just needed more of everything. And to me, this chasing of numbers is so frustrating and kind of futile. Like, where does it end? When does it stop? Luckily, GPA and MCAT get maxed out, right? You can only have a certain 4.0 or 528. If they went higher, students would chase higher. They're like, I got a 528, but maximum is 530, so I'm going to retake it. There was no discussion about the personal growth that happened in that gap year or 2. There was no discussion about the original essays and how there was no good reflection potentially in that time. When it comes to Sid's question here, the only thing Sid is focusing on is numbers. Talk about our philosophy and why we hope students just stop with the numbers.
Yeah. I mean, I think, ultimately, Sid, I think it's an issue of not just numbers. Yes, the numbers are important. They're a part of the process, whatever. But it is a part of, and a lot of, I think some medical schools really try to extend that into how far have you come, not in terms of the numbers, but from where you started to where you are, and what have you learned through that experience of life, of living the day-to-day existence of what we're all doing here on this planet. And what has that meant to you, and what is that all about, and how does that factor into the kind of person you're going to be as a physician? I'm a real advocate for the idea of reflection and reflecting on those experiences, how they've affected you, how you have dealt with them, whether they're good or bad, whatever, and what they've meant to you, and what those experiences have done to make you who you are today and who you want to be in the future. Now, if you're able to do that now, then that's a big plus in my book in terms of how you'll be received by the medical schools. So I want to hear not about I have 300 hours of clinical activities. What I want to hear about is what have you learned from those experiences? What has that meant to you? What have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about medicine? What have you learned about humanity and our place, your place within humanity? And what that means in sort of the bigger picture of things. And so, if you can articulate those things in writing, in an interview, verbally, if you can connect with the reader of your application or with the listener in your interview in a way that helps them to understand your experiences and how they've crafted you into who you are, then that's a big plus in my book. Now, if you want to take an extra gap year, there's not going to be, you say increased scrutiny. No, I don't think so. What's going to be scrutinized is what are you doing? Who are you? What is this all about to you? I think that's the key to this to the picture that you're presenting. So keep that in mind and move forward. Whether it's this year or next year, move forward authentically, vulnerably, and move forward with confidence.
Yeah. Talk about that second half of the question, increased scrutiny on taking an extra gap year. To me, this question just screams, I don't know, like students are scared of what med schools are going to think, right? And a lot of times it's like, do what you need to do. And if the med schools don't like it, oh, well, there are 200 plus medical schools, 200 plus admissions committees. Someone's going to be okay with your journey.
That's right.
how do we get students to stop worrying about every step they take and if it's a misstep or not?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the key, right? What you just said. If you are so worried about every move you make and how it's going to be interpreted, you know, I mean, yes, that's appropriate to a point, but I think often pre-meds take it to the extreme and really, get paralyzed in some cases with their with what should I do, and how's that going to work, and all that stuff. So yeah, absolutely, overthinking pre-med club. That's totally accurate. So just kind of keep that in mind, Sid, that this is not about taking a gap year or taking 2 gap years. This is about you and who you are and who you want to be, and what you know about yourself. And so just kind of think about it in that way and present yourself authentically. This is who I am. This is what I've done. This is what I want to do in the future. And this is why.
Yeah. Andres has an interesting question that I will say right off the bat. Obviously, we are biased. What are some good alternatives to paid mock interviews? My pre-health office does not offer mock interviews, which is disappointing. And application costs are starting to add up. Andres, I would love for you to like email me or message me who your office is, because that's interesting. They don't offer mocks.
Yeah.
Application costs are starting to add up. Any advice, or is it worth the investment? Thank you. So, Scott, again, we're biased. You do mock interviews with students. We offer mock interviews at Medical School HQ. The alternative for me is it's a lot more expensive to reapply than to do a mock interview or two. We will have a mock interview sale probably a little bit later this month, Andres, if you want to wait for that. But yeah, any other alternatives, right? It's easy to just jump in and do it with friends, but what feedback are you getting in that case?
Yeah, that's right. And I have a couple of suggestions. One is we will probably do some workshops this summer in terms of interview and do some interviews, sort of practicing in terms of in this, in a workshop setting. So that is something. And so I would encourage you to watch out for those things that we'll do this summer. Um, and we'll probably continue to do some of that in the fall. So, and those are free. So, you can take advantage of those. I would also, even though your pre-med office doesn't do mock interviews, check with your career center at the institution that you attend. While those mock interviews are typically for job related, job related interviews, it could still be helpful. You could still, get some responses in terms of your how you're presenting yourself, how you talk about the things that you've done, or who you are. So at least check with your career center, see what they can or are willing to do to help you with this activity as well. So I would check with them.
Yeah. NAP also has kind of an advisor kind of tool. I don't know if they'll do mock interviews through that process or if it's more just asking some simple questions, but it's potentially a tool you can check out.
Yep.
A service you can check out. Orlando is a last 40 credits upward trend of mostly A's, 1 or 2 B's, enough to demonstrate good academic preparation, even if I had lots of F's in the past due to immatureness. So not a lot of information here, Scott, but 40 credit hours, mostly A's. It's a pretty decent number.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a pretty decent number. It depends on what lots of F's means. Is lots of F's means 3, or does lots of F's mean 7 or 8 or 10, or I don't understand
1
necessarily what that
billion.
means. Yeah, 1 billion. So I don't really know what that what that kind of means. And so what I would say, Orlando, is it's kind of the same advice I gave or that we gave previously. All you can do is put it out there and see what the response is. My guess is that some medical schools are going to say no, we're not interested, and some are going to maybe give you a chance on that. Kind of also depends on what the cumulative GPA looks like, and some schools do have cutoffs for cumulative GPA that may weed you out from the very beginning. Other schools, may not, and will look deeper in and kind of see the patterns and stuff. So just kind of think about that, the only really alternative is to do a post-bac, kind of program, whether it's a do-it-yourself post-bac or a structured post-bac or even a special master's program. So just kind of think about those options and see what seems and feels right to you, and then move forward. I think again, the reflection part. I think it's strong that you're saying you get it, that it was due to your immaturity. Um, and so I think that's a plus for you, that you're showing some real maturity now by recognizing that and reflecting on that. So that's a good thing. So just kind of you're in a good position in terms of showing that you've kind of got it now and that you're moving forward. So that's a good thing. So I would say keep up the good work, but you may have to do some more schooling to continue that pattern.
Yeah. Keep it going. Interesting question from Monica. For schools that have more than one campus and ask you to write a choice and why, if you prefer one campus, is it best to answer for one campus, or do you decrease chances not saying any campus? So there are some schools, Scott, Mayo. I know University of Illinois has several campuses. Indiana has lots of campuses.
Yeah.
And they will often say, hey, like, which one do you prefer? Do you think it's wise to pick one and make it seem like you've done your homework and are interested, or just kind of leave it blank if they let you leave it blank and you'll just go wherever they send you?
Yeah, that's a tough one. My guess is that it somewhat depends on the school, but I think that here, to me, in sort of a broad sense, I think authenticity is involved here. If you honestly do have a reason for a choice between several campuses, then I think there is something to say about being authentic about that and saying, here's what I prefer. I prefer this as opposed to these others, and here's why. And but if not, then just say I don't have a preference, and here's why. I think you can't just leave it at no or yes. I think you have to give some reasons for the answer, and the reason has to be plausible. And if it's plausible and it sounds like you've done your homework, and I think you can craft the response to that in such a way that it won't necessarily be a disadvantage to you for in either direction that you go. But I would say just be authentic with that, and answer in a broad way, and show that you've done your homework, but that you still have either no preference, or that and you can even say, I prefer this campus for these reasons, but in the bigger sense of things, I'm interested in your school, and will be more than happy to go, wherever the choice leads me.
Yeah. Authenticity rules always. Kyle, almost always. I could think of some exclusions. I have a 506 MCAT, 386 science GPA in biochemistry and molecular biology at We Are Penn State. Putting holistic aside, does my GPA and MCAT show that I can thrive in medical school? Worried about that 506. Yeah, Kyle, there are going to be some schools that will accept it, and there will be other schools that won't, and that just is what it is. So you can either retake it or apply with what you got and know that it is a weakness on your application, and just go for it. One thing to remember, just looking at least the AMCAS data, table A16 maybe. Don't quote me on that. The most recent data for the average MCAT score for matriculants is a 511.7 with a standard deviation of 6.9, I believe. which is a really wide standard deviation. Which brings it down to like a 505. So 505 to a 511.7, 34% of the students getting in to MD schools through AMCAS are at that range.
In that group,
so, in that group. So why not you?
Yeah, that's right.
Jeff freaking out a little bit here. I went back to check on my app status and I discovered that my senior capstone project was misclassified as research/lab instead of, quote, other. Is this something I need to worry about or be proactive about? I'm assuming, Scott and Jeff, if you're still here and can answer, I'm assuming Jeff is talking about an activity and not a class. I would wonder why I was putting the senior capstone project on the activity list anyway, but that's a whole another discussion. That's one of those random gray areas. What do you think? If it's a senior capstone project, to me, capstone is typically a lot of research-based stuff. Should you be worried about it?
No. Short answer, no.
Yeah.
Don't be worried about it. If there's a question from the medical schools that you are applying to, they'll ask it, typically in an interview. But I don't see this as something that would hold you back from an interview.
Yeah. There's really not much to do there at this point. Good luck, Jeff. Have no fear. You'll be all right. Matthew's in his twiddling thumbs phase. What should I do after submitting secondaries and waiting for interviews? Scott, how about preparing for interviews?
Yeah, preparing for interviews would be a good idea, Matthew. I think, spending that time and also this is a good point to make. And I think that, Matthew, what you're experiencing is the difficult transition from being proactive. You've been proactive for 3 or 4 months now. You've worked on everything. You're writing. You're, all reflecting, and you're doing all this stuff on and on and on task, on task, on task. Now you've finished all that, and now you're shifting into a reactive mode. You're moving from proactive to reactive. And this is a very difficult transition for anyone in the Overthinking Pre-Med Club. And so I would say, give yourself time and get involved. And this is a lot of times my advice on this sort of stuff is get your mind off of what's going on in the pre-med world and recognize that there's a whole other world out there. There's a whole world of people that need you, that would love to have you involved in their lives. Get involved in helping other people. Go volunteer somewhere or go do something that gets you out of the bind of pre-med living and gets you into the world of, we don't care about what the MCAT means. And have people, involve yourself with people's lives, and this will get your mind into a bigger existence. And so just kind of think about that and do some of that stuff.
So basically what you're saying is get your mind out of the metaphorical pre-med gutter.
Yes, correct. Absolutely. Exactly.
Love it. All right. Good luck, Matthew.
Yeah.
Diana has a question with Scott Walker. Is that his name?
Oh no! What Walker? Paul Walker.
What? Paul Walker. I knew it was Walker. I was like, that doesn't look like a Diana. Paul Walker is the avatar there. Little profile picture. Thoughts on NYU's 3-year med school program compared to other 4-year programs. So I'm gonna post a link here in the chat. premedyears.com/96. is a podcast episode that I did with the Dean of Admissions at NYU, Dr. Rafael Rivera, talking exactly about these 3-year programs and what it entails. I think it's pretty interesting. Scott, a lot of people think 4th year is a waste of time because you're interviewing for residencies. You're kind of just floating along, doing your thing. Fourth year is definitely the easiest year for almost everyone in medical school because it's just, lots of interviews and just preparing for matching and all that good stuff. But these 3-year programs, you basically match as you get into the program because you're applying for internal medicine 3-year program, OBGYN 3-year program. What I like about NYU is they do have other paths other than the typical internal medicine family practice. So I'm a fan of them. I think if you know what you want to do, I think that's the big concern is what happens if you decide you don't want to do that anymore, and how flexible is NYU with kind of letting you out of that program. So I think that's a conversation I had with Dr. Rivera. So go check out that podcast. That was a while ago.
Good idea. Good idea.
Joey, is there a point in applying to schools? Like NYMC, my alma mater, where they receive a high volume of applications but don't really have any secondary prompts to distinguish yourself from other applicants? Yeah, this is something that has changed relatively recently, I believe, with New York Med, is they don't do secondaries. They just ask for money. It's a little interesting. They said the quiet part out loud. They're like, let's stop needing to do more work with secondaries and let's just put out the tithing bowl. And so, Joey, I think if you are fit there, apply. Obviously, they're doing something to pick those students. So, it's interesting.
and going back to that just for a second, secondaries is not the only place you distinguish yourself. You can do that in the primary application. You can do that presenting yourself authentically in the primary application. That's, don't depend on the secondaries, because the primary is a lot about, especially the narrative of the primaries is where you really say who you are and what you're all about and why you're doing this. And so keep in mind that it's not just about the secondaries, it's where you distinguish yourself from other applicants. So just, keep that in mind as well.
Yep. Definitely. Fluffy, would it look bad if I take anatomy at community college, as it is a class I was interested in, but I was unable to fit into my schedule during undergrad 4-year university due to my work? Thanks. Scott, it seems like a perfect opportunity for Fluffy to be part of the Overthinking Premed Club. Wee! Found a new member, Fluffy, who we got to meet in Baltimore. Hope you're doing well. Don't worry about it. That's one of those things, Scott, like one data point like that, not an issue. If all of your prereqs were taken out of community college and you withdrew from all your prereqs at your 4-year university, like, there's a pattern of what potentially appears like you're running away from the harder classes and taking them at the easier place. So. Another online one. I'm taking biochem online, but I'll attend classes in person. In-person students can also attend online too. So this is more like a hybrid. If it shows up online on my transcript, should I be worried about schools not accepting online? Seems like you should have worried about that before starting an online biochem course, David. It is what it is at this point. Biochem, Scott, to me is one of the most common online prereqs, because what's interesting is there are a lot of schools, it seems like, that don't offer biochem. It's kind of weird. I think if David, you just have to go look at the MSAR or the Choose DO Explorer or the individual sites and see what they accept or not. I think you'll be all right. Good luck. Mimi, I have family with 2 little ones, military family. Do I need to convince medical schools that we're willing to move anywhere? No. Yeah. No. No
I mean,
more
if
than
you're
any other
applying,
student.
yeah, and if you're applying somewhere, one would assume you're willing to move there. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's the hard
yeah.
part, and I've had lots of conversations with military spouses who aren't willing to kind of separate from their spouse who's at a duty station and not going to move anytime soon, and it's hard. It's definitely hard.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mark asks, I've got 250 hours as an inpatient PT tech. Thoughts on attempting to apply next May or potentially be 2 years post-grad from med school due to a switch from PT because I graduate this May or get a master's? Mark, there's not enough info here to give you any sort of good advice. You're complicating the question by adding in the master stuff. We don't know why you're thinking about a master's or what that master's in or what your grades are. Potentially good use to go check out Mapped Pro if you haven't already, where you can go ask our advisors based on all of your data.
Mhm.
John, several family members have attended undergrad at my dream school, and my brother plans on attending their undergrad next year. Is it worth mentioning in my Why Us essay? Scott, this comes up
No.
all the time where a student will be
Mm,
like, why do you want to come to our school? Well, I was an alumnus of your
No.
undergraduate institution. Yeah, why no?
No. Well, some of it I think is this reaction that I have to this sort of legacy mentality.
Yep,
And, legacy is a naughty word these days.
yep,
No, the government especially is on top of this. I mean, there's already congressional hearings happening about legacy at schools like Harvard and big name schools and stuff like that. So I just think it's fraught with potential sliminess in a way. Oh, I don't want to get in your school because it's a great school or because I like the programs or whatever. I want to get in because I am special because my brother went there or I went, whatever, whoever relative went there. It just, I think it's not going to come across as a good response. I think it's a bad idea.
yeah.
Don't like it at all.
Yeah, to me, it's not answering the question why us. It's answering the question why the name, why the brand,
Hmm.
right? The undergrad
Hmm.
institution is not the medical school. The medical school is not the undergrad institution. To me, that's why I wouldn't do it, because who
Hmm.
cares? You went to undergrad there. The med school is separate and different, and talk about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. BB got some stats here. 3.3 cumulative GPA, 508 MCAT, 233 clinical hours, not to be exact. Planning on getting certified to do a clinical job to reach 400 clinical hours. Why are we shooting for 400 clinical hours? That's why that number. But I'll only be able to start work in August or September. Should I apply MD? Scott, again, this is one of those where the focus on numbers tells us nothing about the student themselves and what
Right.
they've learned from
Right.
their clinical hours, how it's impacted them. We
Hmm.
don't know anything about upward trends. A 3.38 cumulative GPA is low, but is
Hmm.
a big trend in there. BB,
Hmm.
lots of other questions that
Yeah.
we would
Yeah.
have to
It's
answer to.
really tough. Yeah.
Yosef, would volunteering at a nursing home, going around and playing games, painting with the residents, as well as transporting them and checking in on them count as clinical experience? It's got the nursing homes game night and game stuff is one of those potential gray areas. Nursing homes are unique institutions where you're doing a lot with these patients. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could definitely make a case for it being a clinical experience. I mean, particularly within the mental health area of patient existence. I mean, I think a lot of times in nursing homes, the reason, it's not just giving this resident something to do. That is why they do that. The other reasons are cognitive awareness and cognitive abilities, mental acuity. There's a lot of reasons why these games exist and these, painting things and stuff like that. I think you could count it as long as the narrative that you're including with the activity really emphasizes what that's all about to you, and it's not just about having fun, but it's about the sort of uh, caring for the patient's mental capacity. I think you can make a case for it.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. Rerect. I have had a mapped account since launch. Thank you. I am
Wow.
still pre-med, but recent experiences have me giving PA extra consideration. If I switch my account to pre-PA, how will it affect all of my pre-med info? It won't. That's the awesome thing about mapped is you can switch back and forth between pre-med and pre-PA. All of your data is still there. It will recalculate your GPA based on the CASPA calculations. Obviously, your MCAT score kind of goes away. It's still there. We don't delete your information, but your GRE info is there now. You have the opportunity to put in PA CAT if you're taking that. The biggest change is with activity categorization. And I know we did some work to kind of like tie like what experience type was similar between the two. I forget if we do that automatically or the student just has to go in and change that category for activities. But all of your info is still there, and it's easy to switch back and forth. So check that out. Mappd.com, mappd.com, if you want to check that out. This question comes up all the time. Do Texas medical schools see how many medical schools we applied to on TMDSAS? They see that?
Sure. Yes, the answer is yes. They do. They not only see where you're applying, but they know throughout the process your status at those medical schools. Now, how does that affect how an individual medical school is going to behave? Not a great deal. So I really, Mimi, I really wouldn't worry about it. It is what it is. And I don't think that schools it affects it. If I look at your school and say, oh well, X school invited you for an interview, so I'm not going to invite you for an interview because of whatever reason, that doesn't really occur. So I don't think there's any reason to worry about it. But the short answer is yes, they do know that information.
Yeah. TMDSAS, I think, is the holdout with the application services that still does that. AMCAS definitely does not, and I don't think ACOMAS does either. So yeah, they do. Tina has an interesting question. I was thinking of writing about a challenge I had with a family in a secondary, with my family in a secondary. Would it be a red flag to have an unsupportive family? Yeah, medical schools be like, uh-oh, this person's not going to have the support of their nuclear family unit. They're probably not going to be a good student. Yeah, they don't have time to think about that, do they?
No, I don't think so.
You're
I mean, it's
grown up.
unfortunate, and if that's, huh?
I said you're a grown up. You can handle yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an unfortunate situation if that's the case, Tina. But all in all, I don't think the schools are going to, really. It's certainly not going to be a red flag. They might look at you with pity, but it's not going to be a red flag.
Yep. All right. Would you classify working at a sleepaway camp for intellectually disabled campers as a medical clinical experience? We were not in a clinical setting, but our campers were often sick and needed care. Scott, I've talked to lots of students where they'll tell me they work at like a muscular dystrophy camp or a camp like this. And I'll ask them, like, what are they doing? Are they doing the clinical stuff? Are they just kind of there hanging out, doing the camp stuff? I think that question really determines, is it clinical or not?
Yeah. If you're just a camp counselor, then I would say no, it's not clinical. If you're there in the capacity as a medical assistant who is working with a nurse or a physician to, deal with these things on an ongoing basis, then I could see that. But in general, I think probably not.
Yeah. So Yosambo, just think about your experience and how much you were doing your counselor duties and how much you were doing some sort of pseudo MA, CNA kind of stuff, interacting with them in some sort of clinical fashion.
Right.
Mikey has an unfortunate situation. Finished my AMCAS primary, but I received a 498 MCAT score. I plan to take another year off to boost my GPA and MCAT. I believe there isn't a process to withdraw apps and tips to stay positive. There is a process to withdraw your primary, but there are like timelines for that, Mikey. If your application is beyond a certain step, then there's nothing to do. Just kind of don't fill out the secondaries and go on your way. Tips on how to stay positive, Scott. This is, I think, not talked about often enough, is the mental load of applying to medical school and going through the process and being rejected, or doing all this work, applying, and then getting your score back and going, that's not going to work. I'm going to need to wait.
Yeah. Well, Mikey, I really regret that you're having to, experience this. It's not a fun time. It's a potentially a real blow to your ego and to your confidence and to optimism. I get it. It is. And what I would say is give yourself time to sort of go through the process of grieving. You're probably angry at some level. You're frustrated. You're disappointed in yourself. You feel ashamed. So there's a lot of sort of emotions going on there, and you got to give yourself some time to go through those emotions and allow yourself to sort of experience those. And then you have to kind of come to a point where you just have to click out of it, and you just have to say, you know what, it is what it is. I'm moving forward. I'm gonna take the bull by the horns and really go on with this. And so I would say tips to staying positive is look at your, if you're successful in medical in your university, look at the grades that you have. Think about the faculty and others who have written letters of support for you. Think about their opinions of you. Connect with the good and the strong parts of who you are and what you've done, and connect with those things in a way that can help you recognize that 498 doesn't define you. That doesn't define who you are as a person. It doesn't define necessarily how good a physician you're going to be in the future. It doesn't define how well you've done academically. It is one data point that we always talk about, one data point out of many. And so just kind of think of it in terms of, here's a challenge that I've been presented, and am I going to move forward? And am I going to allow this to structure who I'm going to be over the next several years? And so this is a challenge, and I get it. I understand it, but at some level or another, you've got to really look down deep inside of yourself and say, who am I? And who do I want to be? And you really got to shift into a mindset that says, damn it, I am not going to allow this to define who I am as a person and who I will be as a physician.
I think we need to quote that, put it on a wall. That's nice, inspirational, motivational speech right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it.
I did learn a few things in seminary, by the way. So.
I love it. It reminds me of what's that coach's name? Vince
Ted
Lombardi.
Lasso. Oh,
him too. Yeah, Vince Lombardi has. I have a poster somewhere of one of his most famous kind of speeches and quotes. It's good.
Yeah.
Carrie has a question. Can you speak to leadership activities? Do they all need to have, quote, official leadership titles, president of whatever organization, or can they be more organic, though less formal? Sure. I think leadership is leadership. You don't have to be the boss to be a leader.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I'm the boss. I'm not a leader.
Oh, that is totally not true.
Yeah, you don't need those fancy titles.
Right.
Mark it as leadership. Talk about the experience. Show your impact. Be good.
Yeah.
Roy has a question. Do schools differentiate between reapplicants who were likely rejected due to applying late versus an inherent flaw in an app from the previous cycle? So, Scott, this question really depends on the first question. Do med schools bother looking at prior applications, or do they potentially just rely on, if they have as part of their secondary, if you are a reapplicant, tell us how you have grown as an applicant?
No, I don't think medical schools really have time to make all these, different differentiations and stuff. I mean, I think that medical schools are going to take what you give them and look at you as an applicant. Now, if you're a reapplicant, they are going to want to know, what's changed, what have you done to improve your application from the previous cycle or whatever. And so they're going to look at that, but they're not going to group you and say, okay, here's this group and they're reapplicants, and then within that group, here's groups that have, as you put it, inherent flaws, and here's groups that applied late, and here's the groups that did this or did that or whatever. That's too complicated. I just don't think it occurs that way. I think they're going to look at who you are, what you're doing, what you've done, how you've improved, and then they're going to move forward or not move forward based on their on their desires relative to who you are.
Yep. That's it. Riyadh. I just read articles saying that applicants decreased over the last few years. You think it would affect admissions anytime soon? Are you talking about applicants to medical school or to undergrad? Numbers to undergrad or to medical school are still going up. But Scott, there is a general trend of decreasing population, less babies being born, less students going through the education system. Med schools, I think, are looking at this. I know they're looking at this and trying to project out how is this going to affect probably just revenues in terms of the admissions office, because there's still 8,000 applications for 100 or 200 students. So we still have plenty of applicants for the number of med school seats that we have. But if all of a sudden med schools are losing 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 applications, aka secondary fees, that's a huge hit to their budget. And they may have to kind of rework their admissions office and other stuff. So
that's right.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to affect admissions because there's still plenty of applicants for the number of seats.
Oh yeah.
Sai, last question here, I think. I want to speak about an African-American patient that had past negative encounters with physicians and not feeling she was being heard. Would it be okay to speak about this in a secondary?
No.
No. Yeah.
Stay
I'll
away
tell
from
you,
negativity. Yeah.
yeah, negativity in the hero complex, I like to call this. Only I can be the one that can make a patient feel heard. Obviously, there are cultural issues here at play, where if you're looking at your profile picture, you potentially are African American as well. Then obviously there's some ethnic bonding or cultural bonding there, where they feel heard because you look like them, potentially talk like them, or from similar areas, whatever it may be. But I don't think you throw other people under the bus. And oh, by the way, you only have one side of the story. Was it truly that they weren't heard, or did they misinterpret, or whatever? So yeah, I wouldn't.
No,
I wouldn't. It's a
don't go
slippery
there.
slope, my friend.
Yeah, it
Some
is.
reading
It
that
is.
goes, oh, this person thinks they're better than me because I'm white and they're black, and they can be the only ones that can interact with those patients. So you just gotta be careful with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's
Absolutely.
no doubt that patients being treated by providers who look like them or from similar backgrounds as them helps 100%.
Mhm.
But you don't need to call it out and say this person had bad experiences.
That's right.
Scott, if someone wants to come do some mock interviews with you, hang out with
Mhm.
you, you are available for that kind of fun stuff.
Absolutely. 100%. Medicalschoolhq.net. Check it out. We do advising, and we do interview prep and all kinds of stuff. So, and the side benefit is you get to interact with me.
Yeah.
So,
Reverend Dr. James Scott
hello.
Wright, you can bless their application. And
That's right.
I don't know if that's a misuse of your God duties. I don't know. I don't know if they talk about
Well,
that sort
Ryan,
of thing.
yeah, we need to talk about that.
It's always a blast having you on here, Dr. James Scott Wright, with all your wisdom to share with students. Again,
It's always so
medicalschoolhq.net.
much fun. So much fun.
We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, everybody.